there's nothing in his resume that says this is a mistake. And that's good. Like, I know we're talking about low bar here, but there's
Is
nothing.
it not an obvious mistake?
Right. Right.
Actually, I'd say that is quite the upgrade.
That's going to be like the DePaul job where the AD already is like, well, there's some guys who wanted the job last time around and we're still in touch with them.
So here's the thing about Waldron that I enjoy is that he's quarterback agnostic. The problem with Luke Getsy and Matt Nagy, well, there's many, but one of the main ones was they relied on two of the best quarterbacks to ever do it to say their system worked. And that's not the case with Waldron. And I know that a lot of people have detractors regarding what happened last season with the Seattle offense, but they also had a terrible O-line. Not that we would know anything about that here, right? They had a lot of offensive line problems and injuries. But one of the things I'm encouraged by is one of the things the Bears are already good at, and that's moving the chains, not necessarily on third down, but first and second. Josh Schrock actually wrote a really good article for NBC Sports Chicago.
Schrock and awe.
He writes many of them. This is, I think, what he's good at. The Seahawks offense on early downs during his time there, including the 23 season, 5th in the NFL in EPA per play. Their success rate is 8th, drop back EPA 6th, the success rate 5th, the rush EPA 5th, and the rush success rate 24th. So rush, we know the Bears are strong in, right? That's not an issue. But here's where the Bears were with Getsy on early downs. As if we talked about third downs and how the third and short was a huge bugaboo for this team. We talked about that all the time. It was also a horrid problem for the defense, I might add. However, in this case, Getsy, the EPA per play compared to Waldron's 5th, they were 28th. The success rate, 40.2%, that's 30th. The dropback EPA negative is 0.064, that's good for 30th. Dropback success rate, 30th. Rush EPA, 7th. As we said, that probably would be the contrast, but then rush success rate, and that's where it gets interesting, only 15th. So what we're saying is the difference in the running game isn't as great as you thought it would have been. And all the other stats indicate that the Bears wouldn't have nearly been as successful schematically as the Seahawks offense was.
Your point about legendary quarterbacks having unicorns that kind of prop up the success of whatever your resume is, I think is significant, especially when you look at what's happened with Waldron, where you have this renaissance of a player that a lot of people thought was just a dog in Geno Smith. Now, I think that Pete Carroll deserves a lot of credit for that because Geno himself has talked about how Pete Carroll changed the way that he thought about and talked about himself. But you still have to have someone who's going to help point the quarterback in the right direction. That's what excites me about Waldron, is that he doesn't seem to be system dogmatic, scheme dogmatic. Like, he seems to be someone who is, you can look at his resume and go, oh, okay, you were in pass-heavy offenses. Oh, okay, you were in run-heavy offenses. Oh, you have balance, like what was going on in Seattle. I just feel like it's a good place to start. I'm not here to tell you that he's going to be a success, but give me the well-rounded coach, and I think that he has a better chance of helping out a player.
You know my rule when it comes to consuming the work of beat reporters, never miss a mailbag, right?
Yeah, because there's stuff in there.
Never miss a mailbag.
Especially a Big Z mailbag.
Big Z, Casey, whoever it is.
Sam Smith.
There's stuff in
Nuggets.
You will find nuggets in there that maybe they didn't want to make a whole article out of, or maybe an editor said, yeah, put that in the mailbag. And you find stuff. So here, Brad Biggs is answering a question about Shane Waldron. And he said that I called a veteran pro scout for his take on Waldron and the work he did in Seattle over the last 3 seasons. This is what the scout said. Sean McVay is the best play caller in the NFL, and Waldron's system is going to be a direct reflection of that scheme. In Seattle, they did open up the offense for Geno, and Shane worked for a head coach in Pete Carroll that would pressure him to run the ball consistently. Waldron is a good play caller. You can wonder if he worked for a head coach that didn't allow him to really open it up. Is he going to encounter this same thing with Eberflus, another defensive head coach? Maybe. The run game is the foundation of what McVay does. It creates a lot of formational variance, and there's a lot of misdirection and motion, and all that builds out into the passing game. Now, this is what I circled. McVay has transitioned to more of a gap scheme running the ball. Waldron is going to need athletic linemen, and the Bears have some of those.
They have two of them.
He says it's possible there could be more pre-snap movement, but we won't know that for a while. The Seahawks really struggled to run the ball. A lot of that can be attributed to a rash of injuries on the offensive line. He said there's been intense focus on the scheme and X's and O's and the play calling. It's a huge part of the job. But what can't be overlooked is how Waldron commands the room, how he presents information to his players, and how he connects. He will be the head coach of the offense. There's a lot more to that job than game planning and play calls.
Additionally, I think a point that stands to be discussed here is not only is he somebody who has been flexible to his talent, but he's somebody who can check the appropriate people in that room. One of my biggest complaints about the Bears was whatever they thought after practices about how they were running them and where they thought they were good, every single time they were grossly underprepared. Whether it was the Packers game to start the season, the Packers game to end it, where I thought a lot of bad decisions were made on both sides of the ball. And then the games in between where they had big breaks. Whatever they thought made them good, or like they were like, okay, we got this. They didn't ever have it. So at least this guy with experience and coming from, I think, the most established coaching tree in the NFL, you have all of that balance and that expertise coming in. I'm pleasantly shocked by this because how many times have I sat here and told you two, Pete Carroll and Geno Smith made me rethink the importance of a quarterback and a coach and that relationship and the success they're in the NFL. He's comeback player of the year in 2022. You still need an entire team. But don't tell me you can't run things. You're the one who needs to change, the coach. Those guys are already committed to. The coaches are the ones who are not. In fact, every NFL team now has had to change their offensive coordinator since 2021.
That's incredible.
With the Bengals
say that
offensive
again.
coordinator. Every single NFL team has had to change its offensive coordinator since 2021. Even Mike McDaniel, because he left Kyle Shanahan. And now Shanahan's the one calling plays in San Francisco.
That is just wild.
I, too, reached out to an NFL front office person about Shane Waldron, and this is what this person told me. I don't know him, but friends of mine who worked with him in L.A. love him. Said he's the real deal, strong leader, excellent teacher, and a team guy. Said he really knows how to scheme and can shred a defense. And this person went on to talk about how big of a job it is to what he did with Geno Smith. So,
whoa, strong leader? I thought the softie said nothing about him screams that he's a leader of men.
Remember that what happens behind a microphone is different from what happens inside of a football organization.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes it's the same. Sometimes you do get a window into the world and the person's an idiot. But a lot of times the person that is in front of the microphone is not the same person that's in the meeting room.
Give me bad liars. That means you're probably a good person who doesn't like the lying part of your job.
Yeah, speaking of which, remember when I was saying how I think the coach likes the quarterback? Well, I think we found out that the coach likes the quarterback.
I still don't think he's staying.
I was very sure that the Bears were going to use that pick on Caleb Williams. I am not as sure with the events over the last 2 weeks.
I think they've brought some excellent people in to counterbalance whatever thought they might have had. Yay!
The good thing is that, and this is the point that Leila brought up, and we're going to get into more in depth in the next segment. I think Waldron is going to work whether it's Justin Fields or Caleb Williams, and that to me is a big plus. Studs suggested that we hear from our guy Sage Rosenfels first. And Leila, this will give you an opportunity to hear what Sage had to say about the new offensive coordinator of your Chicago Bears, Shane Waldron.
Thought he was a great guy. Watched him sort of install plays and do some coaching on the video in front of all these top, high school kid quarterbacks. And, I was impressed. I was like, all right, this guy's got a future in the National Football League. He can coach, and very likable guy. And of course, I've got to know him a little bit here and there over the years, the combine. You have a beer with them, talk about the different offenses and the evolution of the game, but also the type of football that's maybe not evolutionary, but it's just winning football. And I feel like that's what he coaches in his style of coaching, and this whole sort of world of this sort of Shanahan, Kubiak, whatever tree is really, I feel like he has really good, high quality winning concepts, winning style of football. That's the way he coaches.
Shane felt like he wasn't used to talking about a Bears offensive coordinator he might like.
That we got Sage on the record talking about a guy that he knows. It was also interesting because there's a lot of, like, in the beginning of that cut, there's a lot of drops from Sage. He's like, yeah, I know him. And then we were at a camp with Justin Fields and a ninth grade Caleb Williams. There's a lot of stuff that was in there to pick and choose from.
Oh, people are loving the quarterback collective talk, man.
The idea of someone who has experience in more than one system is, I can't tell you how important it is to me, but it is. It's super important.
But my system only works if one of the best quarterbacks ever is running it.
See, I think you're burying the lead. I really do.
Okay.
I think your instinct, your recognition of over the last 2 weeks, your instinct being that these moves are bringing you closer to a belief that Justin Fields could return. I've had the opposite feeling.
Okay, we can pick a segment,
and it's not.
And
but I'm
can-
not. I'm not really basing it. It's purely. A lot of it has been. Brad Biggs is really strong on it. Biggs has been like, look, this is basically saying Fields is done here.
It makes sense for Fields to be done here. It makes sense for them to say, okay, let's start over. I'm looking at, and I could be wrong, and I'm totally
not arguing
okay
for one side or the other, but please do not misrepresent. I would be cool with whatever works.
I'm not either. I mean, I would probably prefer that Justin Fields stay, but the logic of starting over with a new quarterback that a lot of people think is the business makes sense to me too. The way that I've looked at it as is not Caleb versus Justin, it's Caleb versus Justin plus.
Yeah.
All the things that you might be able to get, considering how many desperate teams there will be to try and jump up and get Caleb because of what he is as a prospect. I look at that piece yesterday from NBC Sports Chicago, where it breaks down that Matt Eberflus, inside of interviews with offensive coordinator candidates, was defending Justin Fields. I look at what they clearly took from the player interviews, because it's part of the reason that Matt Eberflus is still here. And then talking to some folks that are like, the Waldron move could mean that they're sticking with Fields because of the job that he did with Geno Smith. I'm not moved to the point of saying that's exactly what they're going to do. But at the end of the season, I was like, they're totally moving on. And now I'm like, I wonder if there might be room for this to continue the way that it was going.
Would you guys like to hear what I talked about with Brad Spielberger yesterday?
100%.
So I was on Football Night in Chicago yesterday, and we had Brad Spielberger on, who's a friend of this show. He's from Pro Football Focus. His specialty is, as we know, cap, free agency. He had a lot to say about some important stuff. That's something we're going to get into at 12 o'clock. But here's what he had to say about Waldron, and he's done a deep dive into his offense.
The messaging coming out about this hire was, we want a guy that no matter who is going to be under center, a guy that can work with different quarterback skill sets and get the most out of them and truly cater an offense to their skill set. And I think we saw a little bit of oil and water at times with the previous OC. You look at Waldron, not just resurrecting Geno Smith's career, but he worked with the Jared Goff in LA, a totally different quarterback, under center, play action. You're looking at more, shotgun RPO, still some play action for Geno Smith, all these various components, how they're attacking defenses, middle of the field, outside the numbers. I think that is the biggest thing. I think he has proven he's a guy that is not going to try to force, his scheme or what he likes to do on the quarterback. He's going to sit back, learn what they like to do, and build around their skill set, their talent.
Imagine that, Leila.
Quarterback
Imagine
agnostic. And I asked him, I said, do you think that this indicates the Bears go in one direction or another regarding Fields or possibly Caleb Williams? And he was like, no, I don't think it's that cut and dried because of this very reason.
Let's give credit to Ryan Poles, because that's a stroke of maneuvering that puts him in a strong position. That if he does want to keep Fields, and people can't interpret the Waldron move as one direction or the other, it continues to
poker.
provide him leverage
It's good poker.
on what to do with that pick. Like maybe we talk about the concept of him being blown away by like a talent or an interview. What if he's blown away by a package? What if,
Sure.
well, you know what, man? We really want that pick. Oh, really? Because we got this guy that might be able to help our quarterback. I mean, we like our quarterback. Maybe we don't love him, but we like him. What you got?
And nothing has telegraphed anything to his counterparts.
I also think it forced them to make a better hire because of it. It forced them to make a hire that wasn't contingent upon one individual on your offense, albeit the most important one.
It's still the quarterback.
But it forced you to have to consider somebody who knows how to adjust. And that was somebody they needed in the building.